video in a while, and I was going to do one about technology, and I know I had said several times that I was going to do it. And I'll probably still put that together, even though it'll just kind of be a history of where we are now. I think most of the things that I'm going to talk about are already so ubiquitous that everyone's using them, whether they have brain injuries or not. But I will, go ahead and do a video that's specifically about what I specifically do regarding that issue and how it has helped me and continues to help me throughout the process of living with this brain injury. What I actually decided earlier or yesterday when I was sitting in meditation was that I could probably do something a little bit more toward the emotional issue and some of the hills that I've had to climb and some of the things that I've had to overcome to get where I am now, because to be honest with you, I'm doing quite well. I think I'm probably doing better than I have been throughout this entire process. So I just want to kind of cover in a general outline. I'm not going to go into too many specifics, but I'm going to cover in a general outline the different emotional stages that I've gone through. I'm sure we're familiar with some of them, kind of the stages of grief, concept. And I myself, like I said, if you follow me online, or I've said before in other videos, if you follow me online or you know anything about me or whatever, then you already see that I kind of hit anger and just kind of got stuck there, and it stayed there for a really long time. And I spend a lot of my time there still. But I do want to talk about, it doesn't seem on the outside a lot of times like I've necessarily managed to overcome much. It's like, now you're just stay there and that's it. But the truth of the matter is I don't, and I haven't. And I actually have managed to dig myself out of quite a pit, actually, with the help of other people. But I have managed to overcome probably the worst of my emotional issues at this point, where I'm able to even do these videos, where I'm able to try to choose topics on purpose, where I'm like, okay, I just want to try to choose something that's genuinely going to be helpful or beneficial to somebody. So one of the first things that happened was when I first came out of the hospital, everyone was telling me stories, and people told me, everyone who was there, my friends and my family members, they basically told me I'm going to say my body, because I don't remember any of them. I remember a zero. I remember nothing about the acute phase of this thing. So I do not remember being in any hospitals. I do not remember having any of these discussions or arguments with, with doctors or with anyone. I don't remember any. I remember exactly zero. On Memorial Day 2006, I had a really bad headache, and I laid down after taking on a leave to try to go to sleep, and then that was it. And I don't really remember anything until July 4th of that same year. But according to most of the people who were there, my friends, my family, even the notes from like nurses and doctors and things like that, I was very interactive. This body, at least, was very interactive. And according to the people who knew me, it wasn't just very interactive, it was me. It had I was speaking the same way I would normally speak. I was making the same expressions I would normally use, even though a lot of times I was expressing hallucinations because I was living in hallucinations, and I remember my hallucinations. I don't remember the reality. I remember most of the hallucinations that I had, and I was expressing those hallucinations to people, but I was expressing those hallucinations to people in the same way that I would normally speak. So I was behaving, this body, if you will, was behaving exactly like me. It wasn't, there was no reason from the way that I was behaving for anyone to believe that I wasn't myself, my personality wasn't engaged. And I don't ever find they don't have a good explanation. Science, medical science, as far as I can tell from my research, still doesn't really have any very concrete or good explanations for why certain things are remembered and certain things aren't remembered, for how the mechanism of memory, long-term versus short-term, and all of it works. We still don't really have a good understanding of that. Medical science doesn't really have a good understanding of that. So while I was being administered various drugs at the time, and some of those can contribute to memory loss in patients, there's no guarantee of what that is. But so basically, for me, I was like Rip Van Winkle, right? Like, I lay down, I went to sleep, and I woke up 5 weeks later being told this crazy story. And I was being told that the injury that I sustained was one that kills 9 out of 10 people. 9 out of 10 people die. 1 out of 10 people survive. And I was one of those people. And I took that, and I went a very, as many brain injuries survivors can attest, and I've mentioned in another video about kind of going through the stages of growth, like I was a child. Well, if you're a child and you're being told a story like that, you're going to be, wow, amazing, you know what I mean? This is amazing, that's crazy. And anyone kind of, I mean, really, you kind of should be, right? If that makes sense. Should, right? We'll get to the shoulding on yourself here in a minute, but I mean, you should be like, wow, this is amazing, it's miraculous, I can't believe this. I can't even believe this story. And for me, that lasted a year, maybe a year into the whole process of recovery and the whole process of recognizing what I was going to live with, trying to determine what I was going to live with from it, and the long-term maybe after effects, was maybe a year before I was like, this is not miraculous. This is not good. This is horrible. This is hell. I hate this. And that is what kind of stayed with me for the most part. Now, at the time, I fortunately also, one of my best friends mentioned to me something about Buddhism and recommended to me that I check out, and this was early in the internet, so it wasn't a big, YouTube wasn't really that big yet, so we were listening just to recordings. You would get recordings and listen to them. There weren't a lot of video, up there. To the Buddhist Society of Western Australia, Ajahn Brahm Wamso, who gives excellent talks now that I understand this, and I've learned a little bit more about it, but at the time, I had no idea who he was, but I started listening to his talks and started seeking information on meditation, also from a doctor named, I can't think of his name. I wish I'd written it down, but I'll probably put some things in the description below. There was a book called, now I've totally lost it. Of course you have, because you didn't write it down. You should have written it down. Written by a cardiologist, and his purpose in teaching mindfulness and meditation was to help his cardiology patients, his heart patients, to deal with their blood pressure, hypertension, and things like that. And then there was another doctor who began teaching mindfulness specifically, and just basic breathing meditation. And those are completely secular sources. And I don't know why, for the life of me, I cannot remember what his name was now. And it was very important. But anyway, it was very important at the time. Anyway, I will probably put this in the description below. But so then my same friend who I mentioned, I was raised a Christian. I was raised a Southern Baptist, and I went through a very, very religious phase, kind of like when you're a child. You know what I mean? It was very much like being a child, and I went through this like very kind of religious, uber Jesus Christianity phase, which is not my normal thing. I've been a Christian. I am a Christian. I will always consider myself to be a Christian. However, I'm not particularly evangelical Christian. I believe that Jesus calls the people that Jesus wants. I don't believe that I particularly have much to do with that other than just being me. And then if other people see how I am and feel that they want to discuss that with me, then I will absolutely discuss it with them. But I'm not a person who goes around preaching to people or beating them over the head with the Bible, for lack of a better way to say it. But I was like a charismatic, you know, tent revival preacher for a little while there, and it was even in my memory, because I do have some memory of the time period. It was a little weird. It was really strange for my personal, for how I am. And I mentioned this to my friend. I was asking my friend's advice on some dealing with my children, and he gave me some advice, and I was like, wow, you sound just like Jesus. And he was like, kind of, not really. And then he began to tell me a little bit about Buddhism and how he had just begun following the path of Buddhism, and made some recommendations to me. And I got off the phone with him, and we went to the bookstore. And we went to the bookstore. I walked into the bookstore, Borders bookstore, and when I walked in the door, there was this huge display of a book called Living Buddha, Living Christ by a Vietnamese Buddhist monk named Thich Nhat. If you're familiar with him, he's wonderful. I highly recommend all of his writings, even Living Buddha, Living Christ. And there's a second book, The Buddha and Christ as Brothers, which was also really, really good in the same vein. And so I do highly recommend Thich Nhat. His books also will teach you basic meditation techniques and a lot of Buddhist theory as well. So I read Living Buddha, Living Christ, and I was, wow. And I began to meditate, actually. At that time, I began to meditate. And going through the processes of the actual physical restoration of my neural pathways and reconnection of things. I went through phases of I would meditate regularly, and then I would not. I would start meditating again, and then I would stop. And I would start again, and then I would stop. Or I would forget, or I would, you know what I mean, just get involved in other things and just, oh, this isn't even helping me. And part of the problem was that it wasn't fixing my brain as quickly as I wanted. Does that make sense? Forget it. Right? And that's what I kept doing. So I went through that process, and then I was in the bookstore one day, and I saw, because I'm a big heavy metal fan, if you follow me at all, if you know anything about me or you've ever seen me talk about this, I'm a huge fan of heavy metal music. I have been since I was a young child. I'll play the guitar as well. And most Buddhist teachers weren't really kind of, like, I can resonate with them because it's just the same way I can resonate with reading a book from any Christian minister or anyone like that who's not, they're writing to a certain audience, and I, as a big metal head, am not really in that audience necessarily, but because I'm a prolific reader, I just read books. I don't care who they're by for the most part, and I will read just about anything. It wasn't that hard for me to still get into what Thich Nhat Hanh was saying or what Ajahn Brahm was saying, listening to his talks. But I ran into a book called Dharma Punks by an author named Noah Levine, who is a punk rocker, right? Which I'm not. I'm a metalhead, but at the same time, fortunately for me, growing up in El Paso, Texas, like I did, when I was a kid, the punks in my community and the metalheads in my community, we were all kind of a united front, and we had to be kind of a united front because we were all outcasts. And there was such a small group of both of us that we kind of had to, like, be a united front, if that makes sense. So we ended up going to the same parties, listening to a lot of the same music, being in a lot of the same places, because that's where the outcasts were, right? And we were all there together, kind of in the same boat, even though we had these kind of musical differences. If you pay close attention, there's not that big of a musical difference, but just saying, you know what I mean? We're not going to try to have some factions. But so I began to read his books, and then I followed him ever since. I watch him on YouTube. He's fantastic. If you want good meditation instruction, Ajahn Brahm, Thich Nhat Hanh, Noah Levine are all excellent meditation teachers. I know that there are more. There are Tibetan teachers. The Dalai Lama obviously is a rock star and he's really fantastic. Matthew Ricard is another Tibetan. He's not Tibetan, but I mean, he's of the Tibetan tradition, who's really fantastic. And it took me a long time because I went through this phase. I kept going through the phase that I'm going to meditate, I'm not going to meditate. Oh, forget it, it's not. Oh, forget it, I don't want. Oh, I don't want to. And then eventually what happened was, because I kept going back and kept sitting 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time, whatever. But one thing that I kept doing to myself, which is something that I think we're seeing a lot on social media and with the, like memes and videos and the whole be positive, kind of concept. And I'm not by any means knocking anybody. There are people in this world who are genuinely rays of sunshine, okay? And you get around these people and their outlook and attitude on things is just genuinely magical and amazing. And no matter what's going on, these people can manage to just glow and just be a genuine light to everyone else around them. I'm not one of those people. I never have been, and I doubt I ever will be. So I'm never knocking those people. Understand that. Even though I'm going to knock the whole positivity movement right now, I am going to throw a wrench into that monkey work, or throw a monkey wrench into those gear works. But those people are fantastic. And when you meet them and they're genuine, you can tell. There's no effort. They do it effortlessly. There's no fake, there's no nothing. Those people just are exactly what they are, and they're being very completely true to themselves. When you meet the people who aren't, and I would be one of those people. If I was up here trying to tell you, oh, just think positively, you'd be like, liar. But the truth of the matter is, being positive has turned into this thing of denying reality. And that's what the negative people are being accused of doing. Well, you never see the positive things. You just never see the positive things. But what the be positive movement is doing is saying everything's positive. Completely deny that there's any negativity occurring to you. And so for years in my meditation, that's kind of what I was operating from. Because I would wake up in the morning. I've woken up in the morning, probably, like I said, since about a year in, maybe a little bit earlier. And I have said, oh God, I don't want to do this again. And at night when I lay down to go to sleep, I said, please, please don't let me wake up if I'm going to still deal with this injury and the after effects of this injury. And for years, that was the first thing, as soon as I opened my eyes and put my memories back into place, because often for many years they wouldn't be. You would have no idea. I would dream yesterday. I would literally dream memories from yesterday. And I would wake up in the morning and I would open my eyes and I would say, I can't, this is just torture. There's nothing good about this whatsoever. This is not a gift. This is not a miracle. This is a punishment, and I am in hell. And that's what I said every day. But then I would spend my day struggling with myself and beating myself up over every thing that I had where I was like, I'm so tired of this thing happening. Short-term memory problem. I'm so tired of a problem with my balance, because I had significant problems with my balance for many years afterwards. I still kind of do, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was to begin with, as I've explained in a previous video. But that's what I did to myself. And it wasn't until I really it was very recently, actually, where I really got the thing about, you don't sit in meditation to beat yourself up and club yourself over the head or whatever because you're feeling a negative emotion. You sit in meditation to recognize that negative emotions are going to pass, just like positive ones will. And when we're trying to do this everything's positive, everything's wonderful, rainbow farting unicorn thing that people appear to be trying to do, that's damaging to you. That's just going to hurt you worse. It's not going to make you feel better because you're denying reality. How you feel is how you feel. The key is to recognize that feelings, emotions, they pass, just like everything else. So once I really started sitting in meditation with that reality and no longer saying to myself, oh, why are you thinking that? Why are you thinking this? That was when the actual breakthrough came, where I was able to go, oh, okay, right. So if I'm really pissed off right now, I can just sit here and be pissed off and pay attention to my breath to the best of my ability. And eventually it passes. And then I'm not pissed off anymore. And maybe I'll shift my focus. Some wonderful scent will come wafting in, or a nice warm breeze will come by, or I'll hear, some music that I enjoy from a distance, or whatever. And then the moment of anger is past. And now I'm hearing music. I'm smelling this scent. I'm enjoying this warm breeze. But it took me 15 years of kind of smacking myself around, saying, you shouldn't think that. You shouldn't feel that. You should be grateful. You should be this. You should be that. And that's where my problem was. So now that I'm able to see that and because when you do that, you also just prolong it. You know what I mean? You just prolong it. Just like arguing with somebody. Yeah, I'm right. You're right. Who's the best guitar player ever, right? And that was, this whole thing that just happened. If you're a guitar player or whatever, you know what I'm talking about here. I'm not going to mention any names. But is this idea that you just prolong that pain when you try to force yourself against it. What you need to do is just sit and feel it and know that that's what you feel. Acknowledge that that's what you feel and let it go. And as these other things happen around you, because you have all of these senses going on all the time. If you're sitting in meditation, usually your eyes are closed, maybe they're not, but usually your eyes are closed, so you're dealing with scent, you're dealing with hearing, you're dealing with the sense of touch, the ambient temperature around you, or if there's a breeze or something brushing against you. I have cats who often like to interrupt your meditation by, rubbing on you or coming and lying in your lap. So you can just let that pass and allow these other sensory inputs to take its place. And when you do that, that's when you're actually giving yourself an opportunity to recognize that it's going to pass or it's not going to pass. Now, this advice, I'm talking about someone specifically with a brain injury and my struggle of coming over from this whole thing of, oh, I'm so mad, I'm so, angry, I really hate this. First, oh my gosh, it's a miracle, it's amazing. And then, oh my God, this is hell and I hate this and I wish I was dead. And now, you know what I mean, going into this case of, well, but you're not dead. You're not dead. You're sitting here right now. So and I think that's something that's getting lost in this whole big, oh, everybody just be positive and be happy thing. You're not going to be happy all the time. And every experience that you experience is not a positive experience. That's not life. That's fake. That's what we think we see on TV. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about, the negative effects of social media. Pinterest is not any more anyone's everyday reality than Better Homes and Gardens was. If you're my age, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or Women's Day, where what do they show in there? All of these perfectly clean, perfectly organized, perfectly painted, everything's fantastic. It's exactly the same thing. It's just in a different format. But the pictures that they depict in these magazines, the glossy magazines of my youth, are exactly the same as what you're seeing on Pinterest. It's not any different. It's like models versus me, right? a supermodel versus me. But when you see pictures of the supermodel at the grocery store who hasn't done her makeup and hasn't done her hair, she looks a lot like me. She doesn't really look that much different. Because it's an illusion. And that's what, we all like it. We all like illusions. We like magic. But it's an illusion, the idea that you will never experience these difficult emotions, whether you have a brain injury or not. When you have a brain injury, maybe it's a little bit more difficult. Maybe because you have lost something, okay? And not playing the worse, better game, but you have lost something. You've lost something of yourself. Those neural pathways are what make you, you. Those neural pathways, thoughts and reactions and emotional steps that you take normally, habitually in your life are a part of your personality. They're what make you recognize yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror every morning. Good, bad, ugly, it doesn't matter. That's what they are. So when they're disrupted, you have lost something. You've lost a piece of yourself. And if you're going through grief counseling for a brain injury, then basically, as ugly as it sounds, but this is exactly how I looked at it, I'm grieving this person that I have to see in the mirror and deal with every day. It's not like I'm grieving somebody that I'm never gonna see again, only when I decide to open up a photo album and look through or watch an old video. I have to look at this person every day. I have to hear her voice. I have to see her hands. I have to interact with her on a regular, everyday basis. So it's different from that perspective. But I think anyone can really benefit from this same concept. And I can go further into it, and I will actually go further into it in another video later. But that's all that I wanted to talk about right now. Again, as always, like and subscribe. If you find that this video was helpful or would be helpful to someone else, please feel free to share it. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to make them below. And I will try to remember to put the list of the books and the people in the description of the video below. Thank you very much for your time, and I will, I'm sure, make another video later.